right, so if you take a look at this graph, okay, again, this would be the Pacific halibut. This purple line would be, this is the one y'all drew. This is the basic population graph. What's this invisible line right here? What's that called?
Zero.
Well, it is a zero slope, but this is the carrying capacity line, okay? Now, notice what happened of this blue line. Okay, I said it overfished, but also notice eventually, actually, this would have started going down. If it wasn't overfished, what would happen to this line? It would actually stay right there, right? Or actually right there where the purple line is, okay? Because the carrying capacity is actually below that peak. So the fishing, it does start to decrease. Now, just a little point. If we start with zero fish, do we ever actually make more fish? No. So technically this graph actually should start right here, go up, and then go back down, right?
Yeah.
Just a little point of knowledge.
Ours is a little bit.
Yours is just a little bit above. Okay, so you have two fish. Two fish make, okay.
That can make a whole entire world out of me.
Can you draw this just for me?
So now, this is if it was overfished. I'm going to pass this iPad on to someone else. I want them to, within the group, I want you to go ahead and draw the line if the fishery was sustainable. Okay? So this is a population of halibut that, again, on the purple line there was no fishery present. And then on the blue line, this was the fishery was present, but then the fishery went crazy and overfished it. Okay? So what I want you to do is go ahead and draw a line on if the fishery was sustainable. Okay, so what I drew was basically the same line, right? If it's gonna make up. It was basically the same line. Now, a couple of things. Okay, couple of things. Yes, the population would increase, and then it has this. But again, remember the fish are being fished. So I would say a little more correctly would be something like this. Was that the population does go up. It hits the sustainable level. It might go down a little bit, but it will peak back up.
And then go down.
Go down a little bit, peak back up.
That's right.
Okay. Because again, in real life, does a population ever actually even a non-fished area, an area that just is there? What happened to the simulation?
The predators eat them.
Okay, the predators eat them, so they decrease. Diseases go down and decrease. They go back and forth. Things like pollution. So again, like I said, this is a cod-dominated ecosystem. Okay, cod is the apex predator, meaning that it's the secondary or tertiary consumer. I'll show you that in here in a second. You do need to notice a couple of things. First off, when you get a graph, you need to read a couple of things. You need to read the title. Okay, the title was just cod-dominated ecosystem. It's up on the very top. You do also need to read your axis. You need to read that this is the population level. So as this is getting taller, that means there's more population. This is the number of years. Okay. It also kind of says right here that cod are being fished for human consumption. You also need to look at the key. Okay? What I want you to do is go ahead and get 4 map pencils out of your box. And you're just going to share them between your group. You can have all kinds of map pencils, whatever you need to do. And I want you to go ahead and notice that the key itself, listen, the key itself is already labeled with dots and lines. But to me, if you color code these lines, it'll be much easier. So you're going to label each line on a specific color. So go ahead and label. So you think that because the yellow and the green, they decrease, but the red, the pink and the blue are increasing, so it's partially sustainable, primarily for the pink and the green, or for the pink and the blue, or for the yellow and the green, or what?
Yeah, but they're getting too high in population.
Okay. So the pink and blue are sustainable, whereas these ones are not stable. So who tells me no? Trevor?
I say no.
Okay, you say no. Why?
Because the population for the blue and pink is probably going too high, while the other two are going too low.
Okay. So these are being too low, so they won't be able to regrow, but these are being too high, so they're going to fall off?
They're gonna.
They would alternate up and down because of different amounts.
So you're telling me that you think that it's going to go
It's going to go back up.
something like, it's going to go something like this, where it's going to go down, and then back up, and then down, and back up, and this one's going to go up, and then back down, and up, okay.
It doesn't stick.
Okay, so take a look at this food web. Okay, I'm gonna pull up food web real quick. So here's the food web. Again, this is on the very bottom. It's on the very bottom of your paper. Notice this is just a very basic food chain. Okay, the phytoplankton are doing what? What are the phytoplankton? What do we call these? Producers. Okay, phytoplankton. The reason why they're producers is because phyto means what? Light. So it does what? Photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is able to produce food. Okay, so what's the primary consumer? The zooplankton. And then what's the tertiary consumer? The cod. Okay, tertiary means third. Okay, so the cod is the tertiary consumer. So if you take a look at that food web and then look at this, what's going on here? If I can go. What's the solid line? That's the cod. What's the dash line? The zooplankton. Okay. So as the cod and the zooplankton go down, as the cod and the zooplankton go down, what do the phytoplankton and the northern crabs go to? They go up. So can you tell me that? Didn't you already tell me this idea? That if I kill off the zooplankton, what happens to the phytoplankton? They're going to increase. Does it do that on the graph?
And the cod goes down
Okay.
because they don't have anything to eat.
What does the northern crab do?
They're gonna die.
They're going to go decrease. Okay? If I kill off the northern snow crab, what happens to the cod?
They go down.
They go down. What happens to the zooplankton?
Goes up.
It goes up. What happens to the phytoplankton?
Goes down.
It goes down. Is that not what our graph is telling us? It is, right? Okay.
So it is sustainable.
So it is a sustainable. And so just like was pointed out earlier, one's going to go up, and it's going to go down, and the other one's going to go up, and it's going to go down, and it's going to go up, it's going to go down. Let me show you another graph real quick.
Darn, Trevor, you're right.
So here's another, just one specific organism. Okay, this is a Pacific halibut. That's that big fish that the guy's holding up. Okay, Pacific halibut. Notice it does do that up and down and up and down and up and down. Because as it's going up and down, you don't have this graph. As it's going up and down, the amount of prey is going up, the amount of predators going down. The amount of prey is going up, the amount of predators going down. So if for some reason, let's say that this red line, okay, represents the producer. Okay, let's say Pacific halibut is a primary consumer. Okay, how would the graph of a producer in this ecosystem look like? Would it follow the same trend going up and down, up and down? Would it go straight across? Would it go down and up, down and up, down and up? Would it go up, 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 up? Would it go down, 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 down? What would it do? It would go what? Down and up. It would look something like this. Why is it opposite?
Because that's when they go down, and that's when they have the chance to grow back up.
There you go. Good. Okay. Okay. It's the same thing you do in cattle. When you go raise cattle, you rotate your cattle around to different crops. Okay? Because then the grass is able to grow back. You do the same thing when you're growing in fields. Okay? The same thing when you're growing in fields. In fields, you rotate certain crops into different fields because each crop has a different nutrient need. Okay? But then again, remember, certain crops are able to fix bacteria, are able to fix nitrogen because they've got extra bacteria in their soil, like soybeans and legumes and peanuts. Okay? You put those into certain crops, and it does the same kind of graph here. Okay? But what it does is it fixes nitrogen. Okay? That was one of those questions that we looked at on the quiz. I'm going to give you that quiz back probably next time, as far as those kind of questions. But again, the basic here is that as the predator goes up, what goes down? The prey. And as the prey goes up, the predator goes up just behind it. Okay, it's just off sync, and it has to be that way. But this is a good, solid, natural resource. Okay, if you're a wildlife manager, this is what you want to see in your forest. If you're a deer wildlife manager, if you work for a major white-tailed deer farm, okay, and this is what biologists do. It's like to me, I think it would be probably one of the coolest jobs you have. So all you do is you go out into a hunting lease. And you count the deer, you count the number of squirrels, you count the grasses available, you count the food sources, or whatever it is. Okay, because squirrels would be the primary consumer, right? Okay, so you count all these organisms, and you determine to make sure that this up, down, isn't going to be affected too much. How many deer need to go off the land? How many deer need to go back onto the land? Those kind of things. Okay?
How would you do that?
You run counts, you take photos, those kind of things. And you have to adjust the amount of producers and the amount of consumers.
Yeah, that would take too much time.
So you drew a line on 1980. On 1980, what I want y'all to do, so this is y'all's group, explain to me what is going on at the point of 1980.
It went up.
And
Everything
What
Eighty?
went up?
Oh,
The cod was going down and the crab was going down.
Okay.
And then the phytoplankton and those, what do you call them? The zooplankton were going up.
Okay. So certain organisms are going down, certain organisms are going up. Okay. If you look in your book
They're going
on to
down.
page 129, thanks guys. So again, in your notebook, all you're going to do is just write down graph number 1 and label it cod dominated ecosystem. That's what the title of that graph is, right? You're going to write down what time that is. So in 1980. So underneath you're going to put 1980, a little dash. And describe what the ecosystem looks like at that time. So very astutely, like they said in this first group, the number of cod and the zooplankton are going down. The number of northern snow crab and phytoplankton are increasing. That's all you got to write. Okay? Once you get done summarizing that, go ahead and pick a later point. So I'm going to pick, and I want everyone to just do the same one this time. So we're going to pick a later point at, let's go with 2000.
2,000.
So year 2000. So go ahead and write down year 2000 and then describe what's going on here. What's going on here? It's the opposite. So describe it as the number of zooplankton and cod are going down. The number of northern snow crab and phytoplankton are going up. It's the same, is it?
It's the opposite.
It's opposite. But this one, 85, it was going down.
Well, yeah.
It's still going down.
Okay, still going down.
If it kept
And way down.
So it would be 20.
And put down like, is it much higher than it was earlier, or is it much lower, or whatever? Okay. And so you can say, if you put down the number of cod and zooplankton are going down, just say in year 2000 they've gone to a point of nearly no population left. Okay, so how does the cod and the zooplankton affect the food chain in year 2000? So you say something like, as the cod and the zooplankton go down, how does that affect the food chain? What do y'all think?
More crab and phytoplankton.
Okay. So as the consumers, the cod and zooplankton, since they're consumers, there will be more phytoplankton and snow crab available. Okay. So when it talks about changing how it affects the food chain, that's what we're looking for. Again, you've listed 3 things. You've listed what it looks like at the beginning. Okay, you've listed what it looks like at the end and how they relate to the food chain. And what you do is go ahead and summarize this entire graph. In general, what's going on here? Does it mean that's going to be sustainable? Okay, and again, this is what, 1970 to 2010. That's 40 years. That's a huge difference. Okay. As compared to the other graph that we did, the halibut graph, the one that goes up, down, up, down, up, down, that one was 40 years, but it was going up, down, up, down, up, down very frequently. So what would you summarize about this graph? How could you summarize this? Does this transfer of producer to consumer, is it going to adjust as quickly as the other one did? No. It's going to take a longer time. Does that mean it's going to be less or more sustainable? It's going to be less sustainable. And that's what you're going to look at. Okay? So summarize that idea that basically the change of the producers and the consumers takes a longer amount of time, so the ecosystem itself will be less sustainable. Okay, so you need to do those three things for each graph. Okay. Now, let's write that down. So you have these three things. You have what it looks like at the beginning, what it looks like at the end, and then what it looks like in general. Like, what is the general summary? The last thing is number 4. So if you look on pages 131 and 132, there is a brief history of each of these populations, each of these ecosystems. So on where it says Part B, Fishery Histories, it says Atlantic cod, and it talks about the Atlantic cod, and how it's the oldest fish in the world, and how there used to be, in thousands of years, they used to bring in tons and tons of cod. Okay, and it talks about the whole history. And then number 12, it says, with your group, compare the information with the observations of the cod-dominated ecosystem graph. And then how does this information support or inform your conclusions about the graph shows? Write down the additional information and thoughts about what might be happening in the cod-dominated ecosystem. Okay? So at this point, why, so based on that history, does this explain why it's taken so many years for it to actually start maybe possibly going up? Okay, so you're going to read through the history and basically summarize, use the history to kind of explain further this graph. Make sense? So 4 things in each graph. You have 4 graphs. Okay, you've got the orca one, you've got the tiger shark, you've got this cod one, and then you've got the perch one.
So
So,
you have to answer those 4 steps
so
on there.
yeah, so just go through every single graph and analyze each graph, looking at the beginning, describe what's going on in the beginning, describe what's going on in the end, describe the entire summary, and then look at the history and say, okay, based on the history, this is why this graph is looking the way it is, and then go on to the next one. Okay? That's all I need to go into your notebook. And again, you can do it as a group. You can work together. Okay. And then the very last step, y'all go and flip on to page 133. You might want to jot this down on the top of your notebook. But on page 133, you're going to do questions number 2 and 5. That's all you have to do. Okay. Actually, you know what? Just do questions number 5. Don't even worry about number 2. Okay. There is A, B, C, and D, so it's actually 4 questions. Okay, that does need to go on a separate sheet of paper. Okay. So question 5, do those 4 questions on a separate sheet of paper. It's basically you're going to explain kind of like what your idea is out of your, yeah. You're going to turn that in.
Wait, so what is that again?